The Logitech C920 came out over 8 years ago now, but it's still one of the most used and recommended webcams for anyone trying to create content, especially if you're streaming on Twitch. But why? Why are we using a webcam that's so old? To put it in perspective, it'd be like me recommending the iPhone 5 is the best phone that you can get in 2020. And as much as I love that phone, we know that's not true. So if there's just not been any new webcams released since 2012, is no one making these anymore? What's going on? Well, of course there's other webcams on the market, and Logitech even came out with a new camera this past year called the Stream Cam. And there are plenty of other companies making webcams that are specifically targeted at gamers and streamers. What's going on, guys? My name is Alan Axiom, and I am here to make sure you always look and sound your best on stream. And speaking of streams, did you guys know that I actually stream 3 days a week over on Twitch? We spend a lot of time on stream talking about the same kind of stuff we talk about over here. So if you have any questions or you need help with your stream, make sure you're following that channel. Links down below. And as well, make sure you subscribe to this channel so you never miss an upload, which happen every single Monday. All right, so let's get back to the point of this video, the Logitech C920, and why the heck we're still using it. One of the main reasons we're using a webcam that came out in 2012 today is that the technology for these things really hasn't come that far in the last 8 years. I'd say the biggest jump these things have made have been going from USB 2.0 to USB 3.0, which, does allow for faster transfer speeds and uncompressed video. But our main issue doesn't really have anything to do with the bandwidth. The issues we're having with webcams really come down to 2 points. Number one is the sensor size. For example, a full frame camera has a 35mm sensor. This webcam has a 4mm sensor, which is basically the size of a pinhead. And really, this is the case for most webcams on the market. So, okay, the sensor's small, but what does that mean? Well, we often get distracted by so many different numbers that manufacturers slap on these cameras, like megapixels, 1080p, 4K, 60 frames a second. But really, when it comes down to it, a camera sensor's one job is to collect light. And when the sensor's only 4mm, it's gonna have a hard time doing that. Though you may be wondering how smartphones with sensors that aren't much bigger than a webcam are able to produce incredible images and video, especially in low light situations. And that actually brings me to my second point. To put it simply, you need the processing power to take the information from the sensor and turn it into a usable image or video. Most webcams really fall short here because, first of all, they're often way too small to have any kind of powerful processing on board at all. And then there's the price. At sub $200 at this size, you're just not gonna find a device that has the ability to process an image that looks anywhere close to what a mirrorless camera like this one looks like. At least right now you're not, which again is why we're using an 8-year-old camera. As far as the form factor goes and keeping it affordable, this is kind of where the market is stuck. So I guess that kind of leads me to this next question is this a bad camera? Should you be using it at all? Or should we be looking at something like the Logitech Brio? It's 4K after all, that must mean it's better, right? Of course you should still be using this webcam if that's what you're looking for, a webcam. It has all the specs we look for. It's 1080p, 60 frames per second. It does okay in low light situations. And I use a low light, generously, at least compared to other cameras. And even the Stream Cam that just came out earlier this year, to be frank, doesn't really perform much better than this camera. And usually the price of the C920 is pretty budget friendly, especially when we're not in the middle of a pandemic. I think normally it runs around $70. Right now, I'm finding it at $120 plus. So maybe you want to hold off on it a little bit, or if you're not scared of the used market, that's another way you could go. I actually lucked out and got mine used for $20 over 2 years ago, and I've been using it almost every day, and it's worked great for me. Though I do want to mention that out of the box, this camera can leave a little bit to be desired, but there's a few tweaks you can make in the settings to really, improve the image. But we'll talk about that in a bit. Actually, I want to go back to the Brio for a second. This camera retails at $199. And yes, it's sharper than the C920. It has a better image, and it's 4K, but it's $200. At that price point, I really have a hard time recommending this to streamers. Especially if this is something you take seriously, you want to be doing it for a while, and you plan on upgrading your gear in the future anyway. Instead, I would suggest getting something like an Elgato Cam Link, which when times are good retails at about $140. And hear me out, a GoPro. You can find a Hero 3 or 4 around $50 used on eBay. And if you're doing the math, for both of those, it's less than a Logitech Brio. But more importantly, this would give you an upgrade path for later. Whenever you get to the point where you want to take your video to the next level for your YouTube or your stream and go out and buy a real camera, you'll already have a Cam Link to use. If instead you buy the Brio, all you'll have is a webcam. This is kind of been a tangent, but there's a ton of videos you can find on YouTube about using a GoPro for your streams. And I definitely think this is a good idea to be looking into. All right, so before we end the video, let's get into the C920 settings like I promised earlier. All right, and now we switch over to the Logitech C920. And the first thing you're gonna wanna do if you're using this webcam is to make sure you have lights. You don't have to get anything fancy, but making sure you're well lit will make this camera look so much better. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is go to your webcam properties and pull up this window, and you're going to be looking for configure video. Once you click on that, and as long as you have the drivers installed for this camera, this is what your view will look like. First thing I would recommend doing is turning off autofocus. This camera will often search for focus and have this weird flex and pulse. So turning off autofocus will definitely help this. You can adjust the focus down here if the focus isn't quite right for you. But typically setting it to infinity is the way to go. The first thing I like doing here is actually going to auto and seeing what it adjusts to. And to me, this is a little overexposed and washed out. So I'll actually bring the exposure down a little bit and the gain a little bit. And for my lighting situation, this kind of works. I'll bring the contrast up a little bit as well, just to have the blacks looking black and not gray and faded. And then I find the saturation is actually a little too high now, and I'll bring that down a little bit as well. And then same thing I did before with the white balance. I'll hit auto and kind of see where it is. Immediately for me, this is too warm, but I do like seeing what the camera does automatically. But I'll bring this down a little bit until I have more of a natural skin tone and I'm not looking blue. And really the main thing you're doing here is adding a little bit of contrast, which I think makes it not look as washed out. All right, and once you've done that, you're gonna open up the filters for your webcam and you're gonna add a sharpness filter. And I already have one of those here. Go ahead and go to the settings for this. What I like to do is I like to turn it up until I start to notice it a lot. Like right here, it's getting pretty sharp, and then I bring it down until I just stop noticing it. Really, I think about 0.2, maybe even 1.5. Let's see. Yeah, maybe a 0.15 is where I kind of like this. And I think that really helps make this look a little better. So yeah, with those little bit of tweaks, I think it really improves the image of this camera and not make it look as washed out as it does just coming out of the box. And of course, your settings might be a little different based on your lighting, but really you just want to focus on that contrast, the saturation, as well as adding a sharpness filter. So yeah, it's 2020 and this really is one of the best offerings when it comes to webcams, especially at this price point. So of course, if you're looking to stream and you're looking for a camera, this is obviously the one that I recommend. If you spend any more, you might as well just get a Cam Link and a GoPro, honestly, because you'll be that much closer to using a setup like this. And with the way the prices are going with these mirrorless cameras, they're getting cheaper, they're getting better. This is an easy upgrade to make. But I'm curious what you guys think. Let me know down in the comments what you guys would recommend, and for that matter, what you're using for your stream. And while you're down there, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit that thumbs up. As always, I'm Alan Axiom, and I'll see you guys in the next one.